Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second Spark Community of Practice. I'm Rachel Becker. I'm one of the MTSS specialists, and I'm also a Spark instructional coach. Today, we have Benjamin Taylor, who's helping us out as our AI expert, and then we have our keynote presenter, Carolyn Thomas. So thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I'll do a short introduction of Carolyn and her experience, and then Carolyn will get us started. So Carolyn has 37 years of experience in Oklahoma education. She's dedicated her career to supporting students, educators, and districts across the state. She began her journey as a paraprofessional and went on to serve as a special education teacher, coordinator, administrator, director of special ed, and all education director. Carolyn holds a bachelor's degree in special ed from Southwestern Oklahoma State University and a master's degree in administration from East Central University. In her current role with the Oklahoma State Department of Education, she manages multiple initiatives, including certification, boot camp programs, severe and profound micro-credentials, long-term substitutes, paraprofessional development, and CPI. She is well known for coordinating our regional paraprofessional support conferences and CPI training, where her leadership and expertise continue to make a lasting impact statewide. So I'm going to go ahead and let Carolyn take it over. And then if you do have questions, you can enter them in the chat and we'll do questions at the end.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending, and thank you to the Spark team for asking me to present today. Thank you for that introduction, Rachel. I don't know who that girl is, but she sounds very busy and stressed. Today, let's begin our discussion. It's the Spark Community of Practice, and today's session is going to be over the basics of data collection and its participation in instruction. Let me share my screen really quick and we will get started. I often like to say Rome wasn't built in a day, but they had to begin one day, so let's begin. In today's presentation, the little overview about what we're going to do is we'll take a look at why do we need data, what data we will look for, how to collect it. Once you get it, what do you do with it? How to analyze data. How does data guide your instruction? And then how do you adjust your instruction according to what you're looking at? After we've adjusted our instruction, we need to put it in an IEP. And then lastly, some things to remember and a few things to avoid. So have you lived long enough to remember these two gentlemen? It's Dragnet. It's an American crime drama television series that was starring Jack Webb, the guy with the dark hair, and Harry Morgan. Dragnet ran for 4 seasons from January 1967 to April 1970. So you probably have not seen Dragnet or heard of it unless you have been around your grandparents for quite a while. But when we are collecting data, we need to do one catchphrase thing that Sergeant Joe Friday always said, and it was, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So when we're collecting data, we need to remember all we need are the facts. So, but why do we need it? Why do we need to collect data? What do we do with it? Well, we need it because it is our power tool. It's the driving force behind the reason of why we do things. Data takes us beyond compliance. It isn't just a requirement, but it is one of the most powerful tools that we will use in instruction. It's the foundation that we use to build on when making our instructional decisions. It's the foundation of a robust, legally compliant IEP, and it should be a simple process. When we complicate data collection, that's when it gets to be where it's not reliable because we don't keep up with it consistently. And we'll talk a little later about how consistency is key. But data also helps us make informed decisions. It helps us know what if we're teaching is actually working, and it provides objective statements to help us determine if what we're teaching is effective. Are we doing it right? It also helps us measure progress, and it gives us enough proof in the pudding to show if we have student growth or if we have a decline. And whichever the evidence shows, that's where we're going to pivot to continue or pivot to rearrange our instruction and try something else. But it will also justify the instruction that we're doing because it will tell us if we're doing it right or if there's something that needs to be tweaked along the way. Data actually is going to be the refining process that's going to put us into a perfect product. So it isn't just a simple thing, it's a combination of different pieces of information. And when we put those pieces together, we're going to create a complete picture of the students' weeds, of the students' strengths, and their educational weaknesses. So the goal of what we're trying to do is to move forward from general statements to specific quantifiable statements that are full of data. So now you are going to be the data detective, and you are going to gather clues from various sources to help build a case for your students' needs. So let's talk about some pieces of things that we need to look for. If we're looking to collect qualitative data, if we're looking to tell how or why, that's qualitative data. Three ways we could collect that. We could look at anecdotal notes. It's just simply going to be things we've jotted down during the day. The student was distracted by background noise today. We could collect work samples. These are going to be dated writing samples that show the progress on a specific skill. Dated is the key. Always remember to keep a date and a time on your data collection. Also, an observation. It's just student engagement, their peer interactions, their efforts. Keep those small things. You're going to collect it all in little pieces, and then that's our qualitative data. It's going to tell us how, and it will tell us why. But if we're looking to tell how many, we need to collect quantitative data. Quantitative data is going to give us a numerical count, things that can be counted, things that can be measured. Our IEP goal progress. It's going to tell us the number of correct responses, the percentages of accuracy. That's quantitative. It's also frequency charts for behaviors, putting down those little tally marks for disruptive outbursts. And also we can collect quantitative data when we use academic assessment scores, our benchmark tests, reading fluency scores. Those are all collecting the how many quantitative data. When collecting data for academics specifically, we could use any of these overall methods, and here are just a few. Let's talk about formal assessments. These are standardized tests. They are state tests, district-wide assessments. All of those are standardized tests. There are also diagnostic assessments. These are tests that are specific strengths and weaknesses, like a phonics assessment. So if we're looking for formal assessments, we have two options, a standardized test or a diagnostic test, okay? The second one is a curriculum-based measurement. Reading fluency is going to talk about the number of words per minute, the rate, the accuracy rates, reading fluency. And then there are math probes, the number of correct problems completed in a set time. So if we're looking for curriculum-based assessments or curriculum-based measurements, we've got reading fluency and we've got math probes. Another way to collect academic data would be things that are just informal data, looking at classroom grades. Overall, how are they doing in the classroom? Work samples, again, there is the key, it's got to be dated. And also teacher checklists. Those are simple tools that are going to track the mastery of a student's progress on any of those skills, all right? So academic data, we're going to look at those three topics. Remember, formal assessments, curriculum-based assessments, or measurements and informal data. One of the most fun things to collect is behavioral data. Very fun to collect. I like to use what I call the M&M chart. It's where you take a handful of M&Ms. You're going to count out 50, 20, however many. You put them in your pocket. When you see a behavior or an outburst, you feed yourself an M&M. And at the end of the day, you've collected your data. You've eaten M&Ms all day, and you have also found how many outbursts or how many infractions, whatever you want to list it, the child did today. That was just something off the top of my head, but I really did do that when I was in the classroom because I needed the reward during the day. So on a serious note, behavioral data, we could look at frequency counts or frequency charts. How often does that specific data occur? The number of times the student speaks out in class, the frequency. The duration is, of course, going to be how long did it happen? How many minutes was the student off task? And then we have the ABC log, the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. These are going to be detailed notes on what happened before, what happened during, and what happened after, the ABC log. And don't forget, there's the M&M chart where you get to count from your pocket. There's functional data. These are social skills checklists. These are tracking interactions with peers and adults. A student needs to be working on a specific skill. You need to checklist to see how well they are greeting people, looking people in the eye, appropriately handshaking. Those can be done on a social skills checklist. And then there are adaptive skills assessments. It's where we're going to evaluate the student's independence with tasks like self-care, their organization, their problem solving. So now that we know what we need to collect, let's talk about some things and go back and touch base about how to collect them. So let's go into some data collection methods, all right? One thing to remember is that data collection should not be a hindrance to your work. It should not be a problem. It should support your work, not something that's going to slow it down or make you dread that you were collecting it. So let's talk about a frequency chart. What is it? It's a very simple way to count how often a behavior or a skill occurs. It's great for looking and tracking things like the number of times they're out of seat, the number of times they raise their hand, the number of times they talk out of turn. Those things can be collected in a frequency chart. So when you need to document behaviors that have a clear start and a clear end, you can use a frequency chart for collecting that data. And here's an example. To track a student's out of seat behavior, a teacher could create a chart with dates and times. Every time the student gets out of their seat without permission, you make a tally mark. You can then analyze the number of tallies per hour or per day. That's using a frequency chart. Our next one is task analysis. It's simply breaking down a complex skill into simple, smaller steps, making sure that they are kept in sequential order. And you could simply record a plus or a minus next to each step the student completes or that they don't complete. So when should this one be used? It could be used when you have a clear step-by-step process for tying shoes, washing hands, doing a multi-step math problem. But let's look at a task analysis for washing hands, okay? My 6-year-old grandson is the worst hand washer in the world. He's the cutest little thing you've ever seen, but he will wet his hands, he will get soap, and while the water is running down, he's rubbing those palms together and all the soap is washing off. The best, worst hand washer in all the world. So let's talk about task analysis and how we would teach my 6-year-old grandson to appropriately wash his hands. Well, we're going to first put the steps in sequential order, and we're going to tell him, first, you turn on the water. Then you wet your hands. You apply the soap, and you rub hands together. Then you rinse, and you dry your hands. Now, if we're going to stand back and we're going to watch my grandson wash his hands, we're going to have the task analysis, all 6 steps in sequential order. We're going to put a plus or a minus beside each step that he got right. So you can see from here that step 1, he did it correctly. He turned on the water. Step 2, he did correctly. He wet his hands. Step 3, we have a minus. So that means, he didn't apply soap that time. So that data shows that he's got everything, all the steps clear, but he's not using soap. Steps 4, 5, and 6 all have a plus, but according to this task analysis, we can now see that my grandson is the best, worst hand washer in all the world. But as a good grandmother would, I'm going to go back and reteach to make sure we get step number 3. And we have anecdotal notes. So anecdotal notes are just keeping a running log of dates. They're brief observations. And they're not always quantitative. These are notes that the teacher has given that are going to give us some rich context. It's going to give us some behind the scenes information. So for example, October 2025, this is our observation. During small group reading, the student was observed fidgeting and looking away from the test. When prompted to read the next sentence, he put his head down on the desk and did not respond. Student then asked to go to the bathroom. Those are anecdotal notes. So this observation tells us maybe we're looking at some avoidance here that's related to reading. One thing we always have to remember, children are going to protect themselves. And when their weak area is being exposed, they're going to protect themselves. They're going to act out or they're going to ask to leave the room. That's their way of protection. So this is suggesting this is avoidance behavior. So let's look at the next one, which is going to be a checklist. These are predefined, it's a predefined scale that's going to have all of the items listed, but we're going to still track the skill or the mastery. And checklists are excellent for tracking social emotional skills, communication, and writing goals. So they could be used things like, are they making eye contact? Are they using a greeting word? Are they using an appropriate greeting word? And did the student smile? Did the student handshake appropriately? Those pieces of information, those pieces of data can be collected on a checklist. And then we have the rubric. Rubrics are score scalings, generally 1 to 4, 1 to 5. It's when you go to the doctor and they say, what is your pain level on a scale of 1 to 10? Or for the children, they'll start with the very frowned face or a happy smiley face to something that's almost in tears. And you can rate where you are according to that. I call it a Likert scale. So when should it be used? It's excellent for looking at things like social emotional skills, communication, writing goals. So if we're looking at it for an example for a writing goal, the rubric on a scale of 1 to 4, organization. Where is the student with organization on a scale of 1 to 4? Where is the student? How is their grammar on a scale of 1 to 4? Did they include a topic sentence? And you're going to rate that on a scale of 1 to 4. And the rubric will give you very clear data. Now, there is one that is not the top notch of all. We basically could put them all together. It doesn't have to be matchy-matchy. We can mix and match. You can use a combination of methods, just as long as you get the complete picture. But it's important to remember to keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate your system. Don't make it too hard, because you're going to obscure your data when you get to where it's not reliable because it's not consistent. So start with one method and you can add more as needed. But if you see that you need to use a piece of this and a piece of this, however you start that way, make sure you're consistent with your data collection and you're ending the same way. And remember, consistency is the key. If you're not consistent in recording and collecting, it's not going to be reliable. Now, once we get all of this, what do you do with it? What's going to happen? What are you going to do with it? We have data collection all across the board in education. We get scores, we look at them, we talk about them amongst ourselves, and then we think, now I don't know what to do with this. So let's start with, you first have to analyze it. You're going to look at analysis of what they're seeing and see what those scores reveal about the teaching method that you're doing and also the student's performance. So we're going to make sense of the numbers that you're seeing. I hope that makes sense. So first thing we're going to do in analyzing data is you're going to look for a trend. Is the student's performance getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it remaining the same? Look for your trend. So for example, if your tally chart shows a student is off task and the behavior is increasing over 3 consecutive days, that's a clear trend. Something is not working. Depending on what we're looking at, let me say, something may not be working. So we have to look to see, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Or is it staying the same? The next thing we look for after looking for a trend is we have to identify the pattern. Does the behavior or the skill, does it happen at a certain time of day? Does it happen during a certain subject? Does it happen with a particular peer? Remember my 6-year-old grandson that's the best, worst hand washer in the world? He also has found that there is one little boy in his class that likes to bully. So from data collection, I encouraged my son, let's collect some data. Let's look for a pattern and let's look for a trend and let's ask the same questions. When my grandson gets home from school, ask the same 3 questions and record what he says. Did you see Mr. Student Bully today? When you saw Mr. Student Bully, were you by yourself? Were you with someone else? When you saw Mr. Student Bully today, what time of day was it? Was it this morning? Was it this afternoon? Was it during PE? And then gather all the data, look for the trend, and we found out, guess what? My good-looking, handsome, best, worst hand washer in the world was the target. From the data collection, he was the target. So therefore, we presented the evidence and basically won our case. There were some other things that I had to encourage him to do, but we basically won. All of that now to say, get back, stop chasing that rabbit, get back to identifying patterns. Did it happen at a certain time of day during a specific subject with a particular peer? And with these anecdotal notes, it's going to reveal that the student's anxiety about math homework consistently goes off the chart on Fridays. Well, what's happening on Fridays? That's a question. What we have to also not overlook is the context of things. The data might be lower one day because they were sick, or they had a rough start to their morning, or they had to go home early, or they didn't get to go to specials that day. Whatever the situation was, you're going to write those things down. Don't overlook the context. And keep that as a key, crucial component in your data collection. So now we know what to look for. We've got methods to collect it. And now we're going to look at it and see how it's going to drive instruction. How data drives your instruction. Well, it's actually a cycle. It's, you know, those signs that we say that's always got something: repeat, live, laugh, love, repeat, cry, eat, poop, repeat, all things for the babies. That's what data collection is. It's all on a continuous cycle. It just repeats. But first, I want you to know that it is a process. It is not a product. And the process is the cycle of using the information that you collect to make decisions about your teaching. It's moving beyond assumptions. It's not about I think, I assume, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So instead of guessing what a student needs, we can use this objective evidence and identify these specific strengths and areas for growth. So it takes away the assumption. And lastly, it makes your teaching responsive. Data will allow you to quickly adjust your methods when something isn't working. Just a pivot to go in a different direction, or, well, you're going to go in a different direction each time you pivot. And we'll talk about that in a few more slides. But the cycle is continuous. The process is repeated. It's assessment, analysis, and action. Assessment, analysis, and action. A continuous process. So the first step, we're going to collect the data. We're going to assess. Gather the information on the student's performance. And remember, it's going to be quick, simple. Frequency counts, frequency charts, checks, work samples, brief anecdotal notes. All right. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to analyze it. This is our analysis. We're going to look for a pattern, look for a trend, and tell, what are we looking for? What is this data? What is it telling us? Is the accuracy improving? Is the student's progress getting better? Are they mastering one piece of this skill, but not quite the other? Those are important questions to ask during the stage of analysis. And then once we have the response to those things, we have to act on it. Act on the data. Adjust your instruction, however it is based on your analysis. You might change your teaching strategy, modify the environment, provide new supports, all right? It's a continuous cycle. It's going to assess, analyze, and act. A continuous cycle. Let's look at some problems. We're going to collect some academic data, and this is the problem. The student is struggling with their reading comprehension goal. That's the problem. Now, we did a curriculum-based measurement, and that is telling us that the student's fluency, their rate, pace of reading, it's improved, but their accuracy on comprehension remains low, and it's just hovering at that 40 percentile. That's what the data shows us. It's not the rate at which they read. It's not understanding what they read. Now we got the data. Now let's analyze it. It's going to show that the student can decode words, but they're struggling to understand the meaning of the context. So what are we going to do? The problem's not with fluency, but it's with comprehension. How are we going to act on it? We're going to stop focusing on word reading, stop focusing on the fluency of it, and we're going to start explicitly teaching comprehension strategies. We're going to ask questions before reading the passage, ask questions during the passage reading, and ask questions after the reading passage is completed. Don't stick onto what you know is already fixed. That's not the problem anymore. Let's stick with what the problem is, which in this case is reading comprehension, and then act on that. Act on the reading comprehension. All right, so now we've got some M&Ms in our pockets, and we're going to collect some behavioral data. And the problem is Your student frequently leaves their seat during independent work time and disturb the work of others. Sounds like we're right, huh? Sounds like the basic 4-year-old problem, yes. Well, this is what the data shows. It says you're using the frequency chart to log the behavior. And this is where we mix and matched it together. We're using the ABC chart to identify the triggers. So now we know what the behavior is, but we also need to know what's the trigger before the behavior. So the data shows the student is most likely to act up after being asked to read a passage on their own, especially if this is a long passage. Well, now for this analysis, we've got what we know. Let's analyze it. What is it suggesting? That we have a form of avoidance. They're leaving their seat to escape to a non-preferred task. I'm sorry, they're leaving their seat to escape a non-preferred task. The length of the passage appears to be the key factor. So now we have analyzed it. Let's break it down. What are we going to do? How are we going to act? This action is we're going to break it into smaller, more manageable chunks. The student is now only asked to read a few sentences at a time, and then they're going to check in with the teacher. So you go and read sentences, read the first paragraph, and come check in with me. Let's discuss it. And now go read the second paragraph. Come check in with me. Let's discuss it. Another suggestion would be maybe the student read paragraph 1, you read paragraph 2, student reads paragraph 3. Or maybe you read the first sentence in paragraph 1, 2, and 3. Anything to chunk it up to make it smaller. The benefits of data-driven instruction is first is that it ensures your teaching is perfectly tailored to each student's special needs, and that you spend less time on strategies that aren't working and you spend more time on strategies that are working. Your data will provide concrete evidence, things that you can use as talking points and discussions, factual information for IEP meetings, parent-teacher conferences, team collaborative meetings, all of that data that you're collecting, that you're analyzing, talk about it. Don't sit on it, use it, because we're going to talk about in a minute how you're going to use that to bring magic. You're going to make it happen. So you can clearly demonstrate that student's growth and their successes along the way. All of those are benefits of data-driven instruction. But once we know now, we've talked about all of this, how do we act on things? How do we adjust our instruction? We have to identify what needs to be changed, all right? What needs to be changed. So how do we act on data if we have a positive outcome? It's doing exactly what we need to do. What do we need to do? Well, baby doll, you bring the magic. This is where the magic happens. Your analysis could directly inform a change in your teaching. If the data shows progress, carry on, continue with the same teaching method, but let's raise the standard a little bit. Let's raise the bar. You might raise the percentage of the goal. Now might be a good time to introduce a new challenge. But remember, when you pivot and you adjust, you bring the magic. You're the one that's making it happen. But what if the data that you've collected is not positive, but it has a negative outcome? What if it's not showing progress, but it's showing a decline? Well, it's time to change something. The instruction that you are doing isn't having the desired effect that's producing that positive outcome. So we need to circle back and pivot and start something new. So let's look at these two examples. The academic example. If a student isn't meeting their fluency goal, the data might show they are struggling with specific sight words. You should act by creating targeted flashcards or using a different decoding strategy. You see how you pivoted? Don't focus on all of the words. Let's focus on the words they don't know. All right, let's create some flashcards. A behavior example. If a frequency chart shows a student is getting out of their seat during independent work, we have data from an ABC chart that might show it's to avoid a difficult task. You should act by modifying the task to be shorter or offering more frequent breaks. All right? It's not always necessary to lower the standard or lower the rigor of the curriculum. That's not always necessary. It is always necessary to look at where you are and adjust from within. Adjust where you are, adjust your teaching method, and then let's find a different way to go get the positive outcome that we need. Now, with all of this data collection, we're not going to sit on it. We're going to take it, and since we have it, let's use it. Let's put it in the IEP. Have you ever heard of PLAF data? I'm so glad I'm able to introduce this to you today. What an acronym. PLAF. The present levels of academic and functional performance. This is data that tells us where the student is right now. Present levels. This is the baseline. This is where they are today, right here. It's a snapshot
Good morning,
of right now.
good afternoon. This is Mary Ann Shepherd. I am so sorry I wasn't able to call you back today. Things got a little crazy at the office and just unforeseen circumstances. If you could.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So was that for me or someone else?
Someone else.
Okay, thank you. So let me go back and introduce you to her again. The PLAF, present levels of academic and functional performance. So this data is going to provide evidence for the students' current abilities, where they are right now, the snapshot of where they are, what they're supported by the date of the assessment, their observations, their classroom performance, everything is on the baseline, okay? So the data tells us today that the baseline is that they currently read 30 words per minute. But it's also, we're going to have to provide a measurable progress towards the goal. The student will increase reading fluency to 60 words per minute, all right? We don't want to just lower the rigor or the standard of it. Let's bump it up a notch and let's take them to one more. So the data you collect is the proof that a goal is being met or that maybe this needs to be revised, all right? So now, how can we take all of this and inform the IEP? We're going to use the current assessment scores. Current assessment scores. 1 year old or less is current assessment scores. We can look at these from the frequency checks, the behavior logs, observations, all of these clear picture data packed pieces of evidence. So, for example, instead of saying the student struggles with reading, let's not say that. Let's add things to it to paint a clear, popping picture. So we're going to say, based on the blank reading assessment, that sounds like I'm trying to put in a bad word. Let me just say it. Based on the STAR reading assessment, the student's instructional reading level is at 60% accuracy. All right. This is how it is informing the IEP based on what we already know. And now we're going to talk about a data-driven goal. All right. This is going to be the baseline or the starting point for every goal. The baseline is going to provide a clear picture of the before measurement that's going to compare the after measurement. All right. So let's talk about the ensuring measurability. Every IEP goal, it has to be measurable. Remember the SMART goals? We'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. Data collection provides the proof that a goal is being worked on and that it is being met. And data shows us when to increase the rigor of a goal that has been met, or when to revise that goal that hasn't been mastered, but allow for a change in instructional strategy. And then we connect all of that to the IEP. We're going to use specific numbers from those assessments and observations that's going to justify the student's needs. So for example, based on classroom observation and frequency count log from the past month, the student engaged in out-of-seat behavior an average of 5 times per class period, which impacts his ability to complete independent work. We have to connect it all together, connecting all the dots. And now let's talk about establishing that measurable goal and making sure that it's SMART. All right. So we're knowing that the student can read 12 high frequency words correctly in 1 minute, but we need to up the ante. Okay. We got to make it rigorous. We're not going to lower the standard. We're going to up the ante on it. So they can read 12 high frequency words correctly in 90 seconds with 60% accuracy. The student will read 30 high frequency words correctly in 1 minute with 95% accuracy by the end of the semester. We tell him where she is, what she can do. She can do 12 in 90 seconds, 60%. Well, now we're going to increase it. We need 30 with 95% accuracy in 1 minute. All right. Had to make it a little more rigorous. Attainable, something that can be achieved. So is this a SMART goal? It is SMART because it's specific. We know that we're talking about reading high frequency words. It is measurable, looking at 30 words in 1 minute with 90% accuracy. It is achievable, something that they can attain. Is it relevant? Well, yeah, reading fluency is relevant. And is it time bound? Yes, because we've stated that this needs to be done by the end of the semester. And where do we record all of this? This can be recorded, your sources of data and how to write it. So we can pull this from the Woodcock-Johnson, from your state test, from your teacher-made test, from your rubrics, your frequency charts or counts, duration notes, ABC charts, all of those sources of data, all of those pieces of information, that's where you can look for it, to analyze it, to put it in your IEP, to work towards it, to collect it again, and repeat the cycle after you've acted on it. We're going to use numbers and facts. So instead of saying she's a weak reader, let's use the numbers and facts to explain that she's a weak reader. So we're going to use the latest STAR assessment and that she read 45 words per minute with 9% accuracy, which is below the grade level benchmark of 80 words per minute. I hope all of this is making sense. So when we're looking at this today, we're going to take the data and let's record it for a goal. All right, so you know in EdPlan, I often say it's EdPain, but it is the system that we use. This is what you're always going to be faced with. And I'm going to give you some examples of how to record it in EdPlan. So we've got the baseline data. Remember, that's our before number to tell how far we were when we started and how far we've come. So example, when given a set of 20 single-digit addition problems, the student currently solves 8 problems correctly in 1 minute, or the student increases from a baseline of 60% with supports to 70% with supports, all right? And then there's the criteria that's going to be the after number. That's what we're aiming for. It's going to tell how much and how often. So the example, the student will solve 16 single-digit addition problems correctly, all right? And then how are we going to measure it? How will you collect the data? As measured by the STAR assessment or whatever the evaluation tool that you're using to collect that data. And make sure it's time bound, tells explicitly what time frame that goal will be achieved by the end of this IEP cycle, at the end of 1 year, by the end of this 9 weeks. Make sure it's time bound. And then we're going to connect all of this to the IEP. But remember, just the facts. It's not a probably that collects data. It's not a I assume that collects data. We only record the facts, just the facts. So our example is based on classroom observation and frequency count log from the past month. The student engaged in out-of-seat behavior an average of 5 times per class period, which impacts his ability to complete independent work. All right? You have to get with your behavior, your BCBA to dig a little deeper with that data collection to come up with some things to work in, to come up with some strategies to work so that this behavior is dissolved and you see a greater connection and success. So then when we're connecting this to the IEP, the baseline, talking about that she could read the 12 high frequency words correctly in 1 minute, but correctly reading 30 high frequency words in 1 minute, 95% accuracy during a timed assessment by the end of the semester in order to improve reading fluency. Did you know in EdPlan, when you print your progress reports, you can print them in a batch? You're going to go to your tools, and then you go to Wizard, and then you go to Progress Report. So instead of having to print each one of those one at a time per student, you can print them in a batch, and all of your caseload will print at one time. So put all of your data into your progress report and print them in a batch. And after you've got them on the progress reports, at the end of every semester, guess what? Those parents are coming for parent-teacher conferences. You've got your data collected. This is the way you can present it to them. You can put it in a summary, turn what raw data you've collected into a clear-cut summary. You can put it in graphs. Parents love bar graphs. Where they were is going to be in the red, and where they are now is in the green. They love those bar graphs and pie charts. Also, a line graph showing the ups and downs. They love those too. Don't forget to provide the context. What are any shifts that could have been placed in this data? Did they get sick? Did they go home early? Did they have a schedule change? Maybe the students, God forbid, puppy died the night before. Those kinds of things. Were there any environmental changes? And then you collect that data and connect it to the goal. Tell where the student is and where they're going to get by the end of that reporting period. A couple of things to avoid and to remember. All right, inconsistent data collection, it's unreliable. Stick with the same thing all the way through your collection. Subjective language, nope, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Things like, she seems to be improving. Use the specific numbers to tell your story. Missing dates. You always have to include the date and the time in data collection. And then not adjusting instruction. If the way you're teaching isn't working and you're not changing anything, you're not going to get better results. So those are common mistakes to avoid, but always remember that data is your guide to making informed, objective decisions about instruction. It's your proof that provides evidence needed for IEPs, for parent-teacher conferences, for team collaborations. It makes your IEP strong and defensive, but it should be kept simple. Find easy ways to collect data, use the combination of it, be consistent, and make data collection a habit. Thank you for coming. I'm Carolyn Thomas, and I'm going to say that's the end of my story. Thank you.
Carolyn, thank you so much for presenting. I know I'm for one excited to go out and try the M&M's data collection strategy that you shared. I love that.
The best one ever.
So we did have one question, if you would be willing to share the presentation. So Benjamin, is that something you're willing to share with us, Carolyn?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I shared the link to the our SPIDIG link tree and you can access the presentation. Benjamin will upload that, he said, on next Monday. And if you have any other questions, you can go ahead and type that in the chat. Otherwise, we'll plan to end if I don't see any questions. All right, just a lot of thank yous. Oh, we do have one question from Angela Lopez. If I'm using IXL for baseline assessments in math, can I use IXL data for my goals?
Yes, yes, yes. Use IXL and something else if you need. But yes, you can use IXL data for your goals. Make sure you take that and make that a SMART goal, okay? You don't want to just take whatever IXL is saying. You have to revert that into a SMART goal.
Great question. All righty. It looks like everybody is saying thank you, and we appreciate you coming on, Carolyn, and thank you everybody for staying and attending.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great one.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.